Perfect. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to day 3 From Hell to Happiness. Free love event going on all this week. I have found 24 amazing women from around the world who have volunteered to share their stories of trauma and triumph. It's been an incredible week, an incredible journey for me and for the women, some amazing stories. I've enjoyed every single interview, every single woman have been amazing. Tonight, we are ending tonight with Rowena from you're in Australia. Yeah, you're in Australia. Rowena is in huh?
Hi.
So welcome, Rowena. That's your Rowena. Rowena is going to talk to us a little bit about some of the abuse and childhood trauma that she suffered. She's going to talk us through some of that, and then we're going to get right to her healing journey, because that's the most exciting part for me, is the healing. And that's the part that's most important to help women or men around the world who have suffered from childhood abuse and trauma, and who are trying to heal or in the beginning of their healing journey. So thank you so much, Rowena. Welcome to this live event. Thank you so much for being here. And please just take us all the way back. Let's just go to your childhood and tell us a little bit about what your childhood was like.
Well, I guess you grow up thinking that this is just what it's like for everyone, But yes, I grew up with a very, very violent alcoholic father. And he's passed away now, so I'm allowed to talk about it because there's some court cases that happened with him. So prior, I wrote a book, and even when my book was being produced, I couldn't mention him really, because they're telling me it was defamation of character and all that. So there were certain aspects I could talk about that was in court records that were public. But yeah, so I grew up, he was very, very violent alcoholic. I was very afraid of him, but then at the same time, I desperately wanted his approval, being that he's my father. And I spent a lot of my time in my later years wanting his approval when he wasn't in my life anymore. And he used to, mainly the abuse was around with my mother. So he would beat her up and kick her down the stairs. And I remember there was one time that he was just so violent. He came home drunk, and he was just going off, like just totally losing it. He ended up getting diagnosed with bipolar. So you can sort of see there was a manic part to him. And so when he drank, it was actually even worse. One night he was beat her up down the stairs, and my younger sister just grabbed my mum and threw her into our bedroom and locked the door, and it was bashing on the door, and there was always holes in our doors. And there was just so many times, and my mum would try to leave and then somehow come back, or he would disappear at times and we didn't know where he was, and then he'd come back in a rage. He worked in a church, so there was a lot of hypocrisy for me around that. Like, I had a lot of issues around religion and church and God and all that for a long period of time in my life, because how could you be working in a church, preaching this whole religion and spirituality, when here you were behind the scenes beating up your family and coming home drunk and just in fits of rage and kicking the door down and things like that. So I really struggled a lot in those early years. My mum separated from him. Gosh, I think I was 9 or 10 or 9. I think I was 9. It's funny how you forget the slight details, but it was 9, and she had to keep it secret because of his history. And so it was this whole planned event where, we went to some friends' houses, and then she had some other person back her up and was with her when she was going to tell him that it was over. But the whole thing had been planned out where we're going to go, what was going to happen. And then it kind of all fell through because he figured out where we were and then came and saw us, and it was just a mess. And I remember him saying, "I'm never going to ever see you again." And it's really strange because I was scared of him, but at the same time I just burst into tears and was thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to see my dad again. I didn't know that this was going to happen if my mum was divorcing him and all that, I think out of all the kids, I took it the worst. My oldest sister and my younger sister somehow, I mean, they've all had their trauma, don't get me wrong,
Of course.
but I was the emotional one. I'm very empathetic. And so I was hypersensitive. So I took on board so much more than my sisters. I think they healed, a lot quicker than me in a sense,
Right.
And then, so after the separation happened, my dad was allowed to see us once a week. On a Sunday, he would come and we would have to go to church with him. And, and I just remember hating it. But after that, then we started to get more visitation rights, and we would be allowed to stay with him for a couple of days. And then during that time, he was living with my grandparents or his parents.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of lied. So my mum dropped us off, and then it was Easter time, and then he was going, they were going away. My mum was going away. I think she had a boyfriend by then. This was my stepfather now. And so they were going away. The moment they left, my grandparents said, "Oh, we're going now too." And so then they left. So we thought this whole weekend we were going to spend with the grandparents and my dad, and then they left. And that's when the abuse happened for me. It was just a sexual abuse. There was only one night ever that ever happened. The other abuse was just violence and emotional manipulation and stuff. But I remember he was just totally off his face drunk. He took off in his car, which he used to do a lot. And he came, I was scared. I went into this panic, oh, what if he doesn't come back? I had this abandonment issues, which was obviously I can recognize now and realize what that was. But at the time I didn't know. I'm why am I so scared? I was panicking. I was standing by the window, and we were staying in my grandparents' bedroom, and they had a massive big king bed, so all three of us were actually in the bed, my sisters and I. And he took off in the car, and then he came back, and I was looking out the window, and he literally opened the car door and he fell and he collapsed, and he was so drunk he couldn't actually walk. And so I was just panicking in this fear state, but my sisters were fast asleep. And then he came into the room, and then he was so drunk, and I'll just remember that smell. And he was literally over me, and he started saying stuff and touching my body and things. And I just went into this fight, flight, or freeze. And I went into freeze. I just froze, and I was trying to pretend I was asleep, I didn't know what to do. And then he was touching me all over my body, and he was saying things like, "I need you so that I can feel like a real man." And just so then I didn't know what to do. And then I started stirring. So he just basically just touched me. He didn't actually penetrate or anything like that. And I think that's because my sisters were in the bed next to us. But I don't even know whether he was that drunk. I don't know whether it was a conscious decision that this is what he was going to do, or it was just off his face and he didn't know what. But that event really stuck with me for, it really affected me for a long time. It made me petrified of being around men. I didn't have boyfriends until I was much older in my life. I was so afraid of men, being afraid of being controlled, and would date young boys, and not young boys as in younger than me, but people that looked like boys. I never wanted to date someone that was a man because I was petrified of being controlled, and and so, and there was a lot of abuse around. He'd be totally drunk. And I remember my older sister would just sit there and we'd be saying things like, "Why do you love me?" And my sister would be like, "Well, because you're my dad." And we'd all be sitting there just petrified. What are we going to say if he asked me? I don't know what to say. And he was just yelling at her going, "That's not good enough. That's not good enough." He was off his face slurring his words. And then he took her in the car one night and left us behind, my younger sister and I. And it was just lots of stuff like that, and violence to my mom when she was around. And then my stepdad came on the scene, and he didn't like that. So then one night he was drunk and he dropped us home, and he wouldn't drop us in the driveway because he knew that my stepdad was at the house. And then my mum came out, and there was this big screaming match in the street because he was only going to drop us on the other side of the road, and we were still young girls. And then my stepdad came out, and there's this massive brawl. It was just,
wow.
I'm probably downplaying a lot of it right now. I'm listening to myself going, okay, it feels like it's just quite downplayed when I'm talking about now. And that's probably because I've done a lot of healing,
Right.
so I don't really feel the emotion so much around it. I've got this story and these events now, but I've done so much work that I don't emotionally feel traumatized, but I was for a long, long time,
Yeah.
for a
No,
very, very long
I
time.
totally understand that because I've done healing of my own for my own childhood trauma. So now I can
Yeah.
talk about it. I'm like, yeah, that happened. And I'm like, no, no, don't feel sorry for me. I'm cool. Like I'm healed. It's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, because it's not like it's not like you don't have any emotion towards it anymore. You've just detached and it doesn't mean as much as it did, for me, 40 some odd years ago. So yeah,
Yeah.
I totally get that. So how old were you when your father was on you on the bed?
So that would have been, so I was in grade
Oh,
grade
you're
six.
right.
It was 6 or 7 because there was 2 years at Easter where they went away. So I've sort of like forgotten which it was the first year or the second year that it happened. So I was like, yeah, I think I was in grade 7. Pretty sure I was great. It was either grade 6 or grade 7. I
So
think I
like,
must have been grade 7 because my mum, and maybe it wasn't because my mum was married. My mum got married when I was in grade 7. No, but that was after. I think that was the year. I think that was in September. I think. So yeah, I think pretty sure it was grade 7. It was either grade 6 or grade 7.
so
I know
young,
my
like 11 years, 10 or 11 or 12 years old.
yeah, because I'm 47 now. Yeah.
You're 47? Shut
Yeah.
up. Oh my God. I'm like, you're like 25. Holy crap. I want whatever you have. Holy. So how now you've taken your own healing journey. Have your sisters as well healed from all this? Or
Yeah, so my sisters went more mainstream. I've never really been the mainstream girl. Like, I'm not really into the pharmaceutical companies and I'm not really
right.
into the doctors and I guess that's because I was sick a lot as a kid and nothing ever worked for me until I started having acupuncture and I
Okay.
had, I tried to help my immune system. But I did have autoimmune disease and all that. So I think a lot of that, the traumas sort of played out in other ways. But my sisters, yeah, so they went down the path of counseling and psychology. For me, I tried that, but I just felt like just talk therapy didn't really work for me.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of research to show that it's not so much just about the talk therapy, and it just can sometimes just re-embed the trauma and not really. It's good for learning to cope and things like that, but so for me it was my journey was very different. I found I was an actor, so I was in the performing arts industry. So actually, there was a lot of, for me, role playing that actually
Okay.
helped me as well. It was challenging and painful, but I used to use a lot of my stuff in my acting, and then the role playing and stuff would somehow help me process it. So that was
Right.
sort of what was going on for my early years. I think I used performing as a way to express what had happened. In my dancing, I'd use the pain in my dancing and my singing and things like that. So I think that was a part of my own therapy. But then in terms of actual therapy, I was seeing a guy, well, I actually still see him. He's a doctor of chiropractic who does neuro-emotional technique, and he's in Double Bay in Sydney. And I came across him because I had an eating disorder. So I think that's again part of my
Sure.
playing out of my role. I did a lot of research with Dr. Doreen Virtue. I know she's was the angel lady, and she's not renounced all that now. But prior
I
to
know.
that, she was a psychologist and she specialised in eating disorders.
Okay.
So she did a paper on women of alcoholic fathers and how women who have alcoholic fathers tend to be more emotional eaters or yo-yo dieters. And
Hmm.
so that was me. And my sisters, if I look at it, they all have we all have a bit of an eating issue.
Right.
I've probably been the one that owned mine and said I have a massive eating disorder. I don't think theirs was as extreme as mine, but yeah, so that was really sort of what led me down the track of my healing, because I was just starting to really suffer from that. And then I developed rheumatoid arthritis. And so then I found this amazing practitioner. Well, actually, I was given this piece of paper one day from this girl. I was doing dance fashion parades, and this girl just saw that I was a mess. She gave me this piece of paper and said, "You need to go see this healer." So I called up this number, not even knowing what kind of healer. I was actually
Just fix
desperate.
me.
I was like, right, I'm ready, and this they're like, oh, East Bay chiropractic. I'm like, chiropractor? I don't need to see a chiropractor. I thought, oh, the healer must work inside the actual clinic of the chiropractor. So I booked in. It was like a month's waiting list. I'm like, God, he must be good. And then I went in there and it was him. He was the chiropractor. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do? And so I'm stuck in this room thinking, oh my, should I leave? Should I stay? What do I do? I'm filling out the form going on. I don't have anything wrong with my back, or what am I doing? Oh God. And I had no confidence back then either. So I was thinking, God, what are they going to think of me if I go to the desk and say, oh, I'm in the wrong place? I was toing and froing for like good 40 minutes. And then I finally got the courage to go, right, I'm out of here. This is just not where I'm supposed to be. She's obviously given me the wrong person's number. And then I got to the door and this guy just literally jumped into the room and said, hi. And I was like, oh my God. So I retreated back. And then he starts talking about, he was drawing these triangles and talking about triangles of health or something. I didn't even know what the hell he was talking about. And then he's like poking my face and making me look in the mirror and showing me how my face is different structure and one side's higher than the other, and he was saying this is all emotional and I don't know. And the next thing he's like waving my arm up and down doing some kind of weird thing, and I'm crying all of a sudden about some guy when I was 17 years old, and I was like, what the hell just happened to me?
Oh my gosh.
And then he just says, come back Tuesday, come back Friday, and I just saw him for 4 years like that twice a week. And so neuro-emotional technique was what he was doing, and now I'm trained in as well,
Wow.
I do that with my clients. But it's an amazing technique. It's using kinesiology, Chinese medicine, homeopathy, and chiropractic. And basically it timelines. So you find out what's going on in your body, what organs being affected,
Right.
and what emotions. So that's the Chinese medicine part of it, looking at the 5 element theory. And then you find out what this emotion is, and then you start talking about that emotion and whatever, and then you'll go back in time through the kinesiology and muscle test, where did this first come about, 10 to 7, conception to 10, 10 to 20, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden this emotion or memory will just come out and you remember, and then so it basically changes the neural pathway and brain plasticity. So you clear it then through tapping on the spine like an activator or a pulse technique where you hold the meridian points and you breathe, and then you're replaying. So the physiology comes up again of that event. And so usually when we've gone through any kind of trauma or stress, we haven't actually dealt with the physiology. So that's like, if someone's got a phobia of spiders, for example, all of a sudden you'll get that physiology, your hands, palms might sweat, or you might start shaking or whatever. Right. So that's kind of what happens when you go back in time. And then, so I just did that for 4 years. I mean, I'm still doing it now, but 4 years full on, like twice a week.
Wow.
And then I found yoga.
Oh, nice.
So, yoga was huge for me. More probably around my eating disorder.
Okay.
And then I've just done so much healing, like kahuna massage, psychosomatic bodywork, shamanic medicine, sound healing. Like I just went through this path of just wanting to heal, and I just tried everything,
So when did your healing journey actually begin? Like take us back. Is your father still alive?
No, he passed away literally 3 months.
You said
3 months after my book was published. That was the irony of the whole thing. So I couldn't talk about him. There was a 6-month debate with the legal team of the publishers, and then all of a sudden he dies, and I was like, oh yeah, the book's already out now. I could have spoken about it, but anyway, it's all right.
So did you like did you maintain a relationship with him all the way up until his death, or you like completely?
No. So good question, actually. So when did I start my healing? Like, so there was like sort of bits and pieces of healing happening along the way. Like, so I auditioned when I was 20. I auditioned to for a performing arts course, David Atkins Dynamite in Sydney. So I was from Brisbane originally, in Queensland, and Sydney's in New South Wales, a different state. So I was accepted into that course. And so as part of that course, we were doing a lot of meditation. And, the head of performing arts was really quite a progressive, that it wasn't just, we weren't just doing dancing. We were really learning about affirmations. We were learning about how to connect energy. And so we're doing like these color walk meditations, and we're learning how to connect together. We did performances all the time, like at the Opera House and things like that. And so we were learning how to come together as energy. And so part of that was the meditations, and she was talking all the time about, letting go of your past. And I didn't quite understand, but these meditations used to affect me, and I'd get visions and I'd get insights and understanding. So I could see that was sort of starting my journey, I guess. And then, reading all the books like Celestine Prophecy and all those things that were coming out at the time, reading reading all of, Louise Hay's books and things like that. So I was sort of starting to, get interested in, there was more than what I was experiencing. And then, and then what I remember, I was in Singapore and I'd come back from Singapore, and like trauma had come out. When I was in Singapore, I had written to my father. He hadn't been in my life for, I think it was when I was 13 or something. Since I was 13, he just never showed up one day. He never ever came. He was supposed to take us to the local show, the exhibition that we have every year, and he never showed up. And so that, there was a lot of abandonment stuff around him as well. And so I remember, he didn't show up. And then 2 years later, so I used to write letters all the time to him, but he never ever wrote back. So that was me seeking for his approval. But then he then tried to take my mum to court when I was 15 to say she was an unfit mother. And so that was when I saw him again in court. And that's when the first time I spoke about what had happened with the abuse. And I didn't speak about it to him. I spoke about it to the lawyer, and she kind of goes, oh, yeah, don't you hate it when that kind of happens? And so I didn't understand. I was telling her what had happened, and she kind of brushed it off like, oh, yeah, it was nothing. So I think that's why I never spoke about it again.
Oh, my God.
I never told anyone else. Like, she was kind of the first person I ever told. And she just brushed it off and goes, yeah, I don't know what was happening. I think they were just, I don't know. So there was a mediation that went on, and we had to tell him why we didn't want to live with him. And it was just like, well, an alcoholic and blah, blah. And that was really painful to have to look him in the eye and tell him you're an alcoholic. And I was 15, but still I was quite emotionally immature. And so I didn't want to tell him. And that was the last time I actually physically saw him.
Oh, wow.
It was when I was 15. And then after that, he wasn't in my life. And then, so when I'd come back from Singapore, when I'd been in Singapore, for whatever reason, I met my husband in Singapore, or my ex-husband now, but he was going to be my husband, and he was my boyfriend over there while I was on tour in a show. And I was there for 4 months or 5 months on tour, living in an apartment and things like that, performing. And he and I got together, and I don't know whether, I kind of knew that he was going to be my husband. And so that brought up a lot for me. And all of a sudden I felt this need to reach out to my father, and I just was feeling, a lot of shit was coming up, and fear was coming up in that relationship about myself and insecurities and all sorts of stuff. So I think it was really just starting to bring that boiling, that bubbling up to heal. So I wrote to my father, and then it was downhill from there. Oh my God. He wrote back and was like, he used to say all these things like, oh, you're a bad person, bad people. If I wrote that I was like, won in a sporting event or something, he'd write, well, bad people can still have good muscles and things. So there was always this underlying thing that was something wrong with me, That's what I mean. There was a lot of emotional manipulation going on. And then, so he wrote back and basically was like kind of rejecting me in this letter. Yet then after that, he started contacting me. He got my number accidentally. He rang my mum, and mum didn't realize it was him. And so he got my number, and then she went, oh my God, I realized it was your dad. He just rang, got your number. So then after that was death. After that, he just started ringing me like nonstop, alcohol, drunk all the time. And then death threats started. That was when I was, so that was when I was 26, 27. So it actually got worse for me in a sense. That's really when I started my healing, because I was just losing the plot. Like every day I was on stage, and he'd be ringing me before I was about to go on stage, and I'm trying to do a show and then do stand-up comedy, all kinds of stuff. And here's my dad ringing me, abusing, telling me he's going to kill me, telling me he's like, he doesn't give a fuck about my younger sister. She's a moron. All this shit that he was saying on the phone. And again, those words, I need you again to feel like a real man. I need you in my life. And that's when I was seeing this chiropractor. And so I was doing all the NET on it. And, and I at one point thought, maybe I need to see him. And then I called him in Queensland when I was there at my parents', and my mum was like, please don't. And I was like, no, this is my healing. I have to do what I have to do. And I realized on that phone call, he was just so drunk and just totally lost. And I just realized, oh my God, I've spent my whole life needing your approval, and I don't need it. I don't want this in my life. And so that's when I actually rejected him. And I said, I don't want you in my life. That's when the death threats got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse.
Oh my God.
And then one day I was on the bus to do my show, and he called, and I just got my nerve up or something, because I normally would freeze again and just like, fuck, I can't handle this. And
Yeah.
I just said to him, look, I'm going to the police on Monday. If you call me one more time, that's it. But I'm going to the police on Monday. And we did. And then my mum took the restraining order out because I couldn't, because I was in Sydney and she was in Queensland. So she took the restraining order out for me. And then 2 years later, when it ended, he sent a letter to my mum's house for me with a photo of me from my formal that I'd sent him years ago, my school formal. And he said, if I can't have the girl in my life, I don't want the photo. So that was kind of it for
Wow.
our relationship.
Oh my God.
Yes.
That's
After that, he left me alone.
so like
Yeah.
right up until you were like 26, 27 years
Yeah.
old, he like
Yeah.
tormented you for most of your freaking life.
Mm.
Wow. Holy crap.
So
I am
yes, I
so
know there's like a lot to that, but it kind of was evolving. So, but that was
wow.
a gift in a sense, because that's really when I started to heal my life. Like it became life or death. Like I had to. And that was then, after that was when I got the rheumatoid arthritis. So, and we believe it was the stress of everything that had been going on. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
I was in
Well,
so
I
much,
mean,
physically in
even
fear. I was in fear.
Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life, talks about your emotional trauma comes
Yeah,
out in your physical form. That's an
that's right.
amazing book too. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
wow. So what a life you've had. But I mean, look at you now. You're like a freaking ray of sunshine. You're like this bubbly,
Aw.
gorgeous. Like, look at you. You're amazing. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing that story. By the way, I don't know if my jaw, how many times it hit the floor. Holy
I saw your
crap.
face going many
Like
times.
many times. So how did your, and I want to wrap this up soon, but
Yeah, that's okay.
how was your relationship with, like, how was your mom? Like she knew you were going through all that with your, like, how did she handle it? What would she do?
I've had a strained relationship with my mother, to be honest. I've never really felt a bond with her, which is hard. I know it's hard. I can see that it's hard on her, but I just don't. I know that sounds awful, but I just don't
Mm,
feel a. I don't
mm,
feel a deep love connection with my mum. And I feel horrible because I've done so much healing, but I just don't have this bond with her. And there was periods of time when I was very angry with her.
I bet.
There was times when I could feel that she was trying to protect us, like she did try to protect us, I guess, but I think she never did any healing really of her own. And she obviously
Mm,
went through physical violent abuse from him, and when she was vulnerable, and married him, and her own mother rejected her and wouldn't come to the wedding. So there's a lot of her own traumas, but I think for me that she never really addressed all of that. And bless her heart, she's still alive, so I hope she doesn't see this in a way. um, but I think that's also what put a strain on the relationship for me, was that I was angry at her,
sure.
that she only ever blamed him. And she's also got her stuff. And, like, but at the end of the day, we're all, like Louise Hayes talks about a lot in her books, we're all doing the best we can with the education we have and the knowledge we
Exactly.
have and the trauma that we've all, had. And it's
Yeah.
all conditioning. Until we work on that conditioning, we're going to keep replaying things out. So on a conscious level, obviously I can accept that and forgive that. But there is still a level of difficulty for me in that
Right.
relationship with her,
So
you know.
she hasn't taken steps to heal then? Has she not
Not
done
really.
any? Not
Not
really,
really.
eh?
Not really.
Yeah, I
Not really.
get
And but I
that.
think it's also that generation, Our
Absolutely.
generation is very much, we've got so much more available to us, and it's
Yeah.
not looked as a shame anymore. Whereas their generation, it was shame. It was like,
S-
you got to go into the
s-
white coat, there's something wrong with you, and you hide things that go on in your family.
Throw the
Whereas
skeletons in the, put the
look at us,
skeleton.
we're here today now
Yeah.
sharing it, because we
Yeah.
know that the more we talk about this stuff, the more we realize how normal it is. I mean, like, one in what, four women are abused, or whatever it is, or of some point, of some caliber of being, either like wolf whistled by a guy out of a truck, or
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
obviously the varying degrees of what we call abuse and trauma, but this is normal, and so we need to talk about this to bring it
Yeah.
out into the open, to make things change, right?
And that's actually one of the reasons why I did hold this week-long event, was to let women around the world know you're not alone, you're not
Yeah.
crazy. There's women who are going through
No.
exactly what you're going through, and you can heal. Like that was the main reason why I'm doing this whole entire thing anyway. But you're right about, that generation. I was always about, just keep those closets, the skeletons in the closet,
Yeah.
keep the door closed. Don't let them out. You know, nobody needs to see our skeletons. It's okay. And then just carry on life like it's okay. You know, all that trauma and pain, it's okay. We don't have to talk about it. Well, yeah, you do, because you're never going to heal if you don't. And you're just going to carry on that trauma for the rest of your life till you die. And how miserable is that? Like, that's just so sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so clearly your healing was all meditation and journaling and all kind of dancing. And you, I mean, you had quite a different array
Yes.
of healing, your
A lot.
healing journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you had to, and we're going to wrap this up because it is over half an hour, but if you had to give one solid gold piece of advice to any woman out there right now who is suffering or healing or trying to heal or starting her healing journey, what can you get? What can you tell her to help her on her way to heal?
Okay, I think, and this is coming from a practitioner point as well as from a person that's gone through her own healing, is don't give up when it gets hard, because it will get hard. Like the healing journey, people sometimes make out like it's going to be all beautiful and rosy. And yes, that is what you're going to end up with. You're going to end up feeling love for yourself. You're going to end up feeling so much more grateful, and you're going to understand that that healing was a catalyst to get to know yourself better and to really create beautiful things in your life. But it is going to get hard. It's going to be an emotional roller coaster at times, and to keep going because it's worth it. You know, so many times people, as soon as it starts to get hard, they go, that's it, I don't want it. And they close the door again. They just go back into the shell and I don't want to do this. And you know what? If you keep going, it is going to blossom, and you have to trust it, you know, and it's not going to be an overnight quick fix. That's, you know, it is a process, and it's a process of unraveling and facing it and looking at the shadow, but that's the beauty of it. And from that, you're going to see how incredible you are, how resilient you are, how strong you are, how inspirational you are, how much then you can actually truly, authentically be there for yourself, which means you're going to be able to be there for other people, and your relationships will improve, and just so much will improve. So just don't give up. You're not alone. There are so many of us out there, and we're all in this, you know, together in a sense, holding each other. And you've got support. You know, there's so many people that you can reach out to.
You're amazing.
Support, right?
You're so amazing. I love this conversation. But you know, healing never ends too, right? Like you're
No, that's right. Like I said, I still see the same guy. I went last week and had a thing come up, and I'm like, oh God, here we go again, another layer.
But you know, people tend to think that, you know, they're going to go to a counselor or, you know, take some courses online or see an online therapist for 6 months. And then by the end of the year, it doesn't end at the end of the year. It's a constant journey, but every step of the way just gets better and better. It's some stages are hard, but you know, after you've crossed that hurdle, it's just more roses and it's just more beautiful every step of the way. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much. Your energy, you are like an infectious human being. Your energy and your glow is amazing, honestly. Thank you for this great conversation. I'm going to thanks. I'm going to drop the link to your website over in the thread, and I wish you all the best on your healing journey.
Thank you. And you also, and good luck with the rest of your interviews. And I cannot wait to share them and get other people involved as well.
Thank you so
much.
Thanks
so much, beautiful girl.
Bye.
Have a lovely night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.